Namaste and welcome to this edition of The Nation at 5. I'm Anand Narasimhan and we begin with the big development that's happened over the weekend, and it's come to the fore or has been disclosed this Tuesday morning. A big blow that's been delivered to the global terror infrastructure with the death or the neutralizing of one of the world's most wanted terrorists, the leader of the Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the number 2 after Osama bin Laden, who has now been killed in Kabul. The United States making the announcement, and it was led by President Joe Biden, who said that an authorized precision-tailored airstrike to target Zawahiri. This, they have revealed, he was hiding in a safe house located in downtown Kabul. 2 Hellfire missiles were used in this operation that killed bin Laden's successor. Ayman al-Zawahiri, a key architect involved in multiple attacks in the United States. He's of Egyptian origin and was a surgeon by profession before he became the dreaded and most wanted terrorist across the world. He's deeply involved in the planning of the September 11 attacks in 2001. Reactions coming in from across the world, with Canada, Saudi Arabia, all calling it a victory against terror. Inputs also suggesting that the origin of the drone was one of the Middle Eastern countries which are actually friendly to Afghanistan, and there was also use of the Pakistani airspace. Now reports coming in that say that Saif al-Adil may be his successor. But there is a different line of facts coming in from the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. Just 15 hours before the strike that took down Ayman al-Zawahiri, CNN News 18 spoke with the Interior Minister of Afghanistan, Sirajuddin Haqqani, the Sargana or the head of the Haqqani network, a wanted terrorist himself, someone who's got a bounty announced by the US on his head, but is currently the Home Minister or Interior Minister of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Sirajuddin Haqqani not only said that his government is fighting terror groups in his country, but he said that there is no presence of Al-Qaeda in his country. He actually went on to say that the Al-Qaeda is defunct, incapable of doing any harm, and is as good as dead. That's what he said. Listen in. Would you like to clarify your position and where you as Interior Minister of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan stand? And this is for the Indian audience.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem.
Bismillah al-Rahman al-Rahim. First of all, I thank your country, your countrymen, your channel and the employees of your channel for the interview, and I welcome you here. I extend my gratitude and respect. I, at the beginning of this interview, wish to clear all doubts and suspicions that are prevailing in India and world at large. That Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan has come into existence with support of Pakistan. I wish to draw your attention that the last 20 years in Afghanistan was a period of annexation, aggression and ulterior motives of the imperial forces to occupy the land of Afghanistan. Whatever they wish to call it, it was for an occupation. Our holy jihad to free our country from the imperialistic power is our legitimate right. We strive to establish diplomatic relations with India, our neighboring countries in the region and the world at large. Our freedom, our sovereignty and self-respect is our legitimate right.
But Mr. Sirajuddin Haqqani, the Indian security establishment, the people at large have several concerns, largely about terror outfits like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Toiba in Afghanistan, and the threat posed by them to Indian interests. Do you agree?
Afghanistan was at war with the external forces since 40 years, and the last 20 years we have been fighting the world for our legitimate right. Our soil is not meant for foreigners, but it belongs to the people of Afghanistan. And we have assured to the neighboring regional countries and to the world that the soil of Afghanistan will be used against any of the countries of the world.
But Mr. Haqqani, our security establishment, our intelligence agencies have confirmed locations, specific locations with latitude, longitude, coordinates of Jaish and Lashkar camps operating out of Afghanistan soil. You are in charge of security in Afghanistan. You are the Interior Minister. So let me ask you this. If at any stage, if the Indian government gives you specific coordinates and locations of these camps, will you be able to act and operate together with the Indian agencies?
Their fears do not have any base. We wish to have cordial relations with India, and such fears seem to be misplaced and undesirable.
What guarantee of security would you provide to Indian diplomatic institutions, projects, and businessmen in Afghanistan at this stage when they want to operate normally?
I have already mentioned previously that such fears are baseless, and we have established peace in the country and ensured that everyone in Afghanistan is safe and secure. We have ensured that the business establishments, national institutions and foreign investments are safe and secure. We have security forces in place to provide security to these establishments, including all the diplomatic institutions. There is no credible fear for the projects, investments. The Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan will prepare ground for their operations without any fear. We firmly assure you.
Mr. Haqqani, another area of concern and a growing concern is the threat of Daesh Khorasan and also very, very critical inputs, confirmed inputs regarding the network of Al-Qaeda affiliates operating out of Afghanistan. What is your take on this?
As we have promised to the world, also the Islamic world is in arms against the ISIS. To control and throw it out, many steps have been taken. With regard to Al-Qaeda, it has no presence in Afghanistan and is no more a threat, and the world is required not to feel threatened about the already dead outfit. Some Western forces which are trying to destabilize the country are being taken care of by the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan to control and contain these forces.
You say that the Al-Qaeda are not a threat and there is a concerted effort to also quash the Daesh. But what steps are you taking as Interior Affairs Minister and also Taliban to stop Afghanistan from becoming a global terror hub again? Because that's the biggest concern.
We have repeatedly said that the Treaty of Doha, which was signed, will be implemented in letter and spirit. And our message to the world is that no such terror outfit will make Afghanistan its center of terror operation. Our security agencies are competent to prevent and to nip such attempts in the bud, and we are firmly united against such forces.
Mr. Haqqani, you are seen as Pakistan's man in the Taliban establishment. You belong more to Pakistan than the Taliban. That's what people say. How do you describe your equations with Iran and Pakistan?
It is the need of the hour that the promises be made to the world, neighbors in the region. In pursuit of these goals, we are striving hard to have friendly and cordial relations with the neighboring countries.
Surprise, surprise, bundle of contradictions, or is it just coincidence that when Sirajuddin Haqqani says that Al-Qaeda is as good as dead, and 15 hours later Ayman al-Zawahiri is dead? But it's all happening in Kabul. So let's try and look at some of the coincidences and contradictions, and you can decide what would you say. This is what Sirajuddin Haqqani says: there is no presence of Al-Qaeda, but Ayman al-Zawahiri was killed in Kabul. The other aspect that stands out: Afghanistan is not a terror haven. Al-Qaeda chief is in the heart of Kabul. What else do you want? Seen as Pakistan's man in the Taliban, but the drone that killed Zawahiri flew over Pakistan. Then no Pak-Taliban tango is what he's saying. But Osama in Abbottabad, Zawahiri in Kabul, how can there not be a tango? How can there not be a connection? That's the aspect. Now we've got more news coming through. The house, that particular house, this place where the strike happened, the balcony which Ayman al-Zawahiri loved to sit, and that's where he was targeted. Now US media says that this actually belongs, and the story is there on news18.com. This house actually belongs to one of Sirajuddin Haqqani's close aides. So the Interior Minister of Afghanistan sitting there and saying there is no Al-Qaeda, his close aides residence was the place where that was sheltering Ayman al-Zawahiri and his entire family. He's a grandfather, so his grandchildren are there, his children are there, they're all living in that house. This is the heart of Kabul. So this is what we are given to understand. So should we take all of what the Taliban say with a pinch of salt? At our own peril, should we trust the Taliban? Or is there much more to it than meets the eye? Let's ask the experts who've been watching these developments very, very closely and who are already also quite intrigued by a string of developments, not just in Afghanistan, but also in Pakistan. Sushant Sareen, I've seen your tweet about a corps commander in Pakistan, about the election commission's ruling as far as Imran Khan is concerned. Zawahiri neutralized. Sirajuddin Haqqani saying that we want to work with India. Dr. Tara Karta is also here. She's a former director, National Security Council Secretariat. Namaste. Always a pleasure speaking with the two of you. So, Sushant Sareen, how would you see? 15 घंटे बाद, he says, koi Al-Qaeda nahi hai. 15 घंटे बाद, Zawahiri is neutralized in a house which belongs to one of Sirajuddin Haqqani's closest aides.
So, Anand, it's very clear that the Taliban, or at least the Haqqani network, have learned well at the feet of their masters in Pakistan. Isn't this exactly the kind of stuff you heard from the Pakistanis? Let's talk about Osama bin Laden. How many times were you told that Osama bin Laden is dead, Al-Qaeda has been wiped out, etc., etc.? And we know it is inconceivable that where Ayman al-Zawahiri was living, that the Taliban didn't know about his whereabouts. When it was very open that, and they were living very openly. It's like saying that if I was to draw a parallel with Delhi, somebody is living in Malcha Marg or Golf Links, and the government of India does not know who's living out there. It's inconceivable. Okay. And the fact that the man is found from the residence of a close aide of Sirajuddin Haqqani, number one. Number two, there are unconfirmed, and I repeat, unconfirmed reports or rumors, whatever you want to call them, that there are close relatives of Sirajuddin Haqqani who were in that apartment when it was bombed. So for these guys to, it's the typical dissemble and deception which the Pakistanis use, that you give us the coordinates and we will make sure that those threats are snuffed out. Report after report is saying that the Al-Qaeda has got strengthened after the Taliban victory. Operationally, they might not be in a position to strike outside Afghanistan, but organizationally, they have started consolidating themselves, and ideologically, their footprint is expanding. Both in the cyberspace, we are seeing the kind of propaganda aimed against India coming from Al-Qaeda handles and Al-Qaeda accounts. And it is believed that a lot of that is coming from or being generated inside Afghanistan, where these guys have the run of the place. So for Mr. Haqqani to say that, he doesn't know and all of these people are dead and gone and don't exist, is the kind of stuff we've always heard from, these kind of organizations and these kind of people. That is one part of it. The other part of it is, I think, what I would really like to focus on is the ramifications of what has happened on Sunday. Because, it will have ramifications both within the Taliban rank. It will have ramifications as far as the terror infrastructure in Afghanistan is concerned. For example, if there is a sense that, the Taliban as a whole, which is unlikely, or a Taliban faction, which is more likely, has sold out Ayman al-Zawahiri partly to get some kind of assistance back from the Americans, partly to win some brownie points and get recognition, and partly to snuff out the Al-Qaeda challenge, because the Taliban have suffered at the hands of the Al-Qaeda in 2001. They lost their emirate then. They don't want this to happen again. Now, if that was to happen, that creates serious problems within the Taliban ranks between the Al-Qaeda supporters and the Al-Qaeda haters, number one. Number two, many in the Al-Qaeda could start making a beeline for the ISK, because ideologically the ISK has been born out of the womb of the Al-Qaeda. So that is as far as Afghanistan is concerned. But in Pakistan, what happens to, which is almost a kind of a surrender document which the Pakistani army was signing with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Will that agreement still go through? What will be the response of both the Taliban factions, especially the Haqqanis and the TTP, to the very clear evidence that the Pakistanis were part and parcel or involved in more than one ways in this operation of the Americans. After all, they gave their airspace. We know that there were a lot of chatter, a lot of talks taking place between top American officials and top Pakistani officials. And to imagine that this issue, or at least the right to use the airspace for whatever purposes the Americans wanted, the Pakistanis were not taken in the loop, at least on that much, I don't think is again acceptable to anybody. And clearly, the sense will be that the Pakistanis have sold out what has been happening in sold out Al-Zawahiri simply to get out of the troubled economic waters in which they find themselves. And if that is going to be the case, the Pakistani reliability goes for a 6. Number one. Number two, I think there will be a kind of a blowback inside Pakistan for what they have done. The Pakistanis might think they can handle it. I am not so confident.
Well, just taking this forward, Dr. Tarakarta, quick comment. I've got some more inputs coming through. Let's put out those inputs and then we'll come back to this money question and this financial angle question. Now, we are given to understand, our investigations editor Manoj Gupta getting us this input, that Ayman al-Zawahiri's location was compromised, in the sense it was leaked. Now, top sources from within the Taliban are saying we confirmed the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri, but they are also saying that the Taliban was actually negotiating with the Al-Qaeda chief that he should vacate Afghanistan. So they were negotiating, and there were multiple rounds of conversations that had happened, urging them not to orchestrate or perpetrate any big terror activity from Afghan soil. The second aspect is that the location of Ayman al-Zawahiri was leaked because by somebody who was part of these meetings. There were multiple meetings which happened with Ayman al-Zawahiri, and they were perhaps reaching a position where Ayman al-Zawahiri was going to make his way out of Afghanistan. So the Taliban, who have worked very, very closely with the Al-Qaeda in the past over the last 4 decades of whatever their strife and how they believe their struggle is, which was mainly to regain control of Afghanistan, and their version is that they wanted to free Afghanistan from foreign clutches. So they work closely with the Al-Qaeda. Here they are saying, officially they say there is no Al-Qaeda. Now we are given to understand they were negotiating with Ayman al-Zawahiri, leave Pakistan, leave Afghanistan. And this location was leaked. But Dr. Tarakarta, $7 billion nearly of the Afghan assets which have been frozen by the US, the FATF grey list for the Pakistanis where they want to emerge out of. So was this a quid pro quo for telling the US, you come do what you want, but give us our money?
No, and that is definitely viable, because we also know that the Pakistan Army chief, of all people, was talking to a US official regarding the IMF loan. You know, while his finance minister is talking to the US consul there, the consulate, the army chief is talking to Washington. That just shows, why would an army chief want to talk about financial matters? What else was discussed? This is about somewhere about, say, around 22nd July, this conversation takes place. Okay. So when you trace that back, and there is also the question of a bill which is being put up in the Senate, which is calling for complete examination of what was Pakistan's actions just before the Americans vacated Afghanistan. That is the first part. That is the second part which follow on to that. So there is immense pressure coming onto Pakistan. That is what was happening in this month in particular, from the IMF, from Washington, from the Senate. So if Sirajuddin Haqqani, as you said, is more Pakistani than Afghan. So it is like Sushant said, it is inconceivable that he did not know that Zawahiri was there. He would know. Would he give him up in a natural situation, in a normal situation? Probably not. But the pressure would have come from somewhere else. And now you're saying somebody leaked it. Obviously. And now if you look, Anand, before he came to Kabul, this man would move locations very frequently. That is before the US vacated Pakistan. You didn't know where he was. And if you notice, his attacks against India began after the US vacated and he was repositioned in Afghanistan in safety. Then he started his videos against India, if you remember, on the hijab ban and on the Nupur Sharma incident. So there is a link there. Why is this man's suddenly his sense of safety increases after the US leaves, which is unsurprising. But after that, he turns against India. And this is a person whom someone who knew his antecedents very, very well, knew he hated the US far more than Bin Laden did. His main focus was the US.
US.
He hardly ever spoke about India. One odd time there was a mention of Kashmir. So there is a whole series of dots which have to be connected as to why this man was finally killed.
Yeah.
He is the price which was paid for Pakistan to get what they want. I would imagine also the Afghans, but the Afghans being what they are, the Taliban as a whole, would be unlikely to give him up. It would be somebody within, like I said, who had to be persuaded to say that give this location up, and he was probably there for a short while.
Well,
During that short while,
at 71, was he also past his sell-by date? And was there a fresh leadership already? So was he expendable? So did he suddenly become expendable?
Yes.
And at the price of giving up Al-Zawahiri, if they are going to get $7 billion released for Afghanistan, and Pakistan is going to emerge out of the FATF grey list, why not? Meanwhile, the Al-Qaeda cadre will continue to be rerouted towards India, and his mission of unleashing all these cadre onto Indian soil, into Jammu and Kashmir and etc., that plan continues to happen. So it's a win-win on all sides, and you have Joe Biden there trying at a time when America is facing recession and huge pressure and perhaps a loss in credibility globally on their pullout of Afghanistan, nearing the first-year anniversary. They claim, oh, after Osama, we've struck down Zawahiri also. So there are multiple aspects. Let's try and quickly look at the location of Sherpur. Why this is critical, ladies and gentlemen. Then we'll come to the India angle in terms of how much of a worry it is for India. So in Kabul, Afghanistan, Kabul, as we go right in, look at the location. This is Sherpur, Kabul. The Indian embassy is less than 5 minutes away. The Iranian embassy is 10 minutes away. The US embassy is 12 to 15 minutes away, and it's all in this radius of this area. You also have other embassies like the Canadian embassy also present in this region, and this is a highly, highly monitored and right at the heart, like they call it downtown Kabul. This is where Sherpur is. So anybody and everybody moving around this area, there will be so many people who will be watching them. And it's impossible that the Interior Minister of Afghanistan did not know that he was at this particular location. Now more news coming through on the impact on India that may be triggered by Zawahiri's death. Now this is Arunima getting us these details that one, that the death may affect the morale of the Al-Qaeda cadre in India. Secondly, the death may hamper operations of Al-Qaeda affiliates. Now there could also be a reverse effect. The reverse effect would be that there could be some serious retaliation to try and energize the cadre and stop them from shifting to Daesh Khorasan or even the IS. Then Saif al-Adel may expand field operations. Now he is likely to be the successor. Since there is no named successor, the immediate number 2 to Zawahiri and somebody who's been monitoring the field operations is this person, Saif al-Adel. We've got a picture of his. We'll put that out also. CNN News 18 has accessed that picture. It's a dated picture, but that's who Saif al-Adel is. And they may expand field operations to counter exodus. So there may be a lot of activity to try and energize the cadre, saying it's not all over, it's not done and dusted, and it's not a dead duck yet. Close ties between Al-Qaeda and Taliban very clearly evident, and this is a worry for India. We knew what it is, but it's so strong and it's actually happening. That puts paid to the huge aspect of the trust that India is going to put, and whether or not India should really invest in engaging with the Taliban and trying to help the people of Afghanistan via Taliban. Ayman al-Zawahiri stationed in a posh Kabul neighborhood, and Taliban's safe haven may be extended to the Jaish and the Lashkar. So what's the guarantee that that's not happening? That's Saif al-Adel. A dated picture of his. He's also a most wanted terrorist, part of the most wanted terrorist list. Tensions could also emerge between the Taliban, Afghan Taliban, and the Haqqanis over these leaks to the US. That's what top intel sources are also suggesting. Arunima now joins us with more. Arunima, so Indian agencies and Indian officials watching this closely, but does this also come as a dent? Does this also perhaps suggest that the Taliban, while wanting to talk to India, was actively encouraging those who want to hurt India?
Yes, it's a very fluid situation, but one thing is definite, and that is you can't trust Taliban. What did Taliban say when it signed this agreement and that posed the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan? They said what happened with Osama bin Laden will not be repeated. The kind of patronage that Osama bin Laden received will not be given. And here we are, Ayman al-Zawahiri in the heart of a very well-protected area in Kabul. Embassy is located around it. And somebody, this is what India's strategic, sectors, this is the agency's assessment. They feel somebody obviously tipped off the United States. Where did that tip-off come from? And this could lead to suspicion between the Haqqani network and the Taliban. If they fight on this amongst themselves, what is it that that the situation would mean for India? That is being watched very closely. Second thing they are watching closely is what happens to India-centric terror organizations like Jaish and Lashkar. The Pulwama investigation, among other things, showed how closely these organizations are linked. Jaish cadre, Lashkar cadre actually went to Taliban and Al-Qaeda camps to train in Afghanistan. So if Al-Qaeda cadre starts leaving, how does that impact us? How does it impact Jaish? How does it impact Lashkar? Third thing, most importantly, even if the cadre from Al-Qaeda moves towards ISIS, we do know that ISIS is trying to increase its footprint here in India. So what does that mean for us? So these are questions that the Indian establishment is closely looking for, answers to. But like I began by saying, that they're very clear, you can't really trust the Taliban.
Yeah, you can't trust the Taliban, you can't trust any of these terror outfits, but then what do you do? How do you take things forward, Dr. Tara Karta? What does India do?
I think I disagree slightly, because the end effect is what? Zawahiri is dead. Whether a leak or whatever it is, he's done for. Right? So in a way, you've got what you wanted, because he was turning against India. And also, the only danger is the successor, Saif al-Adel, in my view, is far more dangerous than Zawahiri. Like you correctly said, Zawahiri was 71, he was well past his prime. Saif al-Adel, in fact, many people wanted him to be the leader rather than Zawahiri, because he is a long-time Al-Qaeda man. He knows the people, he knows the ranks, he knows operations. He's a very, very dangerous man. So he has actually the potential to unify these possibly demoralized cadres, though, of course, the chatter that we're hearing is that if he's dead, 100 other Aymans will follow. So all that is there's going to be a lot of rage. And I frankly wouldn't like to be in Pakistan's shoes right now, because a lot of fingers are going to get pointed at Pakistan. But as far as we are concerned, your objective is what? Your objective is to get to the terrorists in Afghanistan. If the Taliban or parts of the Taliban are helping in that, well, that's all to the good.
But then if there are others who are actually working against Indian interests, then how do you balance this, Sushant Sareen? Because India is walking a tightrope here. We are helping them with 50,000 metric tons of wheat. We have gone back to open the consulate and we are trying to facilitate travel. We are trying to reactivate the projects. There is a certain level of engagement that is happening, because you have to try and somewhere tame the beast. But in this case, what do we do? How do we take this forward so that it doesn't spill over into our soil? It doesn't come back here and they don't try and manifest here.
So Anand, one way or another, it is going to come into our soil. I think we need to be prepared for it rather than live in Kogu land that, we will, if we deal with the Taliban, this thing is not going to come into India. So I think we should be prepared for that. Number two, I think what the government is trying to do, they are trying to feel around right now. They are trying to see whether they can do something out there with this engagement process. I don't think we are in any mood to go whole hog, open up everything, go back to what it was before August 15th, the kind of relationship. I think we are feeling around. We'll see how the water is. Accordingly, we will either upscale or downscale our engagement with them. And I think there is some merit in that particular argument. The third is, of course, is this a strategic approach or is this just a tactical approach from India's side? Now, frankly speaking, unless the Taliban were to become a reformed kind of an organization, ultra-conservative, all right, but, reformed in many ways, or at least in the ways we want them to reform, then I suppose we can learn to live with such an organization. But if they remain a radical Islamist organization, which sponsors, which provides safe havens, a sanctuary, which provides all sorts of other support to similar radical organizations in the region and across the world, then I think we have a serious problem on our hand. Because then what you are dealing with is something much more than what you would otherwise be dealing with as far as Afghanistan is concerned. And I think that is the strategic question. If the Taliban are unreformed, should we follow any kind of a policy that stabilizes them, that gives them a degree of legitimacy? And I personally believe that we should not. I believe that we should, it does not serve our interest to see such a country, such a organization consolidate in a country like Afghanistan. But I think that is the billion-dollar question as far as we are concerned.
Right.
Baki, the small tactical adjustments can happen. That is par for the course.
Right.
But the larger, bigger strategic question needs to be answered.
True. And then the other question is that if US can and take out Ayman al-Zawahiri, why can't we take out those who are threats to our soil?
Don't go down that road.
No,
Don't go down that road.
No, I'm not
US
going
is US. It's a superpower.
No, sir.
You are
Point
not
is that
anywhere
the
close to
point
that.
is my simple point is, in my own neighborhood, if I can't do that, then why should we allow the US to get away with something like this? If they can take down Zawahiri, why can't I take down, or why can't India take down Rauf Asghar? Why can't India take down? No, so
that's the logic of power. You do what you can, you suffer what you must.
Well, so let's get a little more powerful. Perhaps that's what we need to do as a nation, as a collective. Sushant Sareen, Dr. Tarakarta, thank you very, very much. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, China is really flexing muscle. From cyber attacks to bomb threats to tanks on at their beaches. They're doing it all because they don't like Nancy Pelosi visiting Taipei. We'll get you the details. Stay with us.